All right, so welcome everyone. So today we are going to be having a discussion around underage drinking and how it impacts our teens who are currently developing. Their bodies are developing, their brains are developing, even their personalities are developing. So what we're gonna go into are some key facts so that you all have the tools to be able to have some of those sometimes seemingly tough conversations, but that are productive and that help set really healthy boundaries for our teens. Really quickly, I am from a small but mighty nonprofit called the Alliance of Coalitions for Healthy Communities. Our office is based in Troy, but what we do is we serve all of Oakland County, and our mission is to work with various community partners, like I am here on Independence Television here in Clarkston, not in Clarkston, here in Clarkston. Like I am here in Clarkston, right? And so what we do is we focus on that mental and emotional wellness. We focus on substance abuse and misuse prevention. We also focus on harm reduction and recovery support. So we do a number of programs throughout the community, and our goal is to really make sure that folks are receiving the tools that they need to make healthy and smart decisions for their lives. A quick shout out to the Clarkston, not Clawson, to the Clarkston Community Coalition, headed up by Mrs. Tanya Cunningham. All right, for those of you who are in attendance with me today, just some quick housekeeping rules. One, making sure that all phones are silent so we don't have anything kind of ringing or buzzing as the presentation or as our conversation progresses. Making sure that you engage with us, right? There aren't a lot of us, but we can still have a whole lot of fun. And also making sure that if we are gonna have any side conversation, that we try our best to keep it very, very low so as to not disrupt the flow of our discussion. So for our objectives, first, we're going to talk about the effects of alcohol on the developing teen brain. Then we're also going to go into some different signs for you to look out for, especially as parents with your teens. We're going to talk about some of the transition times when folks are moving from critical time point to critical time point in their lives. And last but certainly not least, discuss ways to, again, have those conversations, because conversations, healthy conversations, are important. So, did you know that 47% of Oakland County high school students report that it is sort of easy or very easy to get alcohol? Now, what this does is this raises a little bit of awareness on how accessible alcohol is, especially for those who are underage. So, as we are working together and keeping our eye out, we need to make sure that we are being mindful of how accessible it is and where some of those places or some of those accessibility sites are. Quick question. Does anybody know at what age does the human brain mature? Yes, we have someone who says between 21 and 25, and the correct answer that we go to is 25. So we have to give or take maybe a year or two for different people, because as people, we are all different and we all develop at different levels. However, a safe bet when it comes to adults is that their human brains have fully matured or been fully developed by the age of 25. So what does this really mean if our youth, those who are far below age 25, what does this mean for them? What are the implications behind them if they are consuming alcohol? So what we're going to do is we're going to watch a quick video that shows how alcohol impacts the teen brain, and then we'll have a little bit of discussion about those impacts.
Alcohol is a depressant that affects both inhibitory and excitatory neurotransmitters such as glutamate and GABA, which is why you feel less inhibited and less coordinated after a few drinks. Alcohol's effects on the brain may also cause slurred speech, poor judgment, confusion, slowed reaction times, worsened motor performance, and blurry vision. Teenagers who drink are even more susceptible to alcohol's negative effects because their brains are still developing. Two parts of the brain that are particularly affected by alcohol during the teenage years are the hippocampus and the prefrontal lobe. The hippocampus plays a pivotal role in learning and memory formation. Studies of adolescents show that heavy and extended alcohol use is associated with a 10% reduction in the size of the hippocampus. It also shows that the function of the hippocampus is uniquely sensitive to alcohol at this age, and that alcohol may be poisonous to its nerve cells, damaging or destroying them. As a result, teenagers who regularly drink have difficulty creating new, lasting memories or recalling information. The prefrontal lobe is important for planning, judgment, decision-making, impulse control, and language. This area of the brain continues to change during the teenage years and into the early 20s. Research with heavy drinking adolescents show that these young people have smaller prefrontal lobes than young people of the same age who do not drink. While research tells us alcohol can damage the developing brain, it is not clear how much alcohol it takes to do this. So avoiding alcohol during the teenage years is certainly the safest choice. If you or a loved one is suffering from alcohol addiction or abuse, call our helpline today and take your first step to a healthier life.
Yes. So what is something that we took away from that video? What was one of the key points or something that really stood out for my folks who are here in the audience? What was something that stood out to you all?
The developing brain is actually more sensitive to alcohol than the mature brain.
Absolutely. That is a phenomenal point. So what was said is that the teen brain or the developing brain, there are a lot of differences when it comes to comparing the teen or developing brain to that of a fully matured one. And one of those differences is how alcohol impacts the development of it, right? Alcohol has a more severe impact on brains that are developing, and this can lead to damaging or even destroying different nervous cells, right? So this can impact how students are progressing, how they're developing, has so many different implications when it comes to things like their prefrontal lobes or their hippocampuses. So having to make sure that our teens are not drinking while they are underage can have some really, really healthy, some really long-lasting healthy benefits because they are not at risk for some of the implications that come with abusing alcohol or using alcohol at a young age. Binge drinking. So when it comes to teens, right, because, with youth, they shouldn't, especially those who are under 21, right? Youth who are under the age of 21, it is illegal for them to have alcoholic beverages. So what that results in is for those who can access that alcohol, it means that they're going to binge drink, right? Because they want to get rid of the evidence, they want to hurry up and they want to get to it, right? And so binge drinking differentiates between men and women. So for women, binge drinking is 4 or more drinks within a 2-hour time span. And for men, it is 5 or more drinks within a 2-hour time span. So binge drinking can be defined as excessive alcohol use in a given or short period of time. And as I mentioned previously, our teens, because they're not supposed to have it, are more likely to use alcohol excessively. And again, not only does premature use of alcohol have negative impacts, but excessively using it, especially at an age where you're not yet legal or where your brain has not fully developed, can have some even more severe impacts. So, does anybody know, can anybody tell me what some of the impacts or some of the effects of underage drinking can be? What are some of the impacts, right? What do you think can happen to a teen or someone who is under the age of 21 or someone whose brain has not fully yet matured? How do you think that drinking alcohol can impact the development of their brain?
So from the video, they were talking about reduced ability to form memories.
Yes.
Recall things.
Absolutely. It can impact their ability to create memories, or it even kind of takes them out of experiencing certain moments. Absolutely. So when it comes to the effects of drinking, one of the primary things is that teens who drink are more likely to engage in risky sexual activity, right? Or they are more likely to experience sexual or physical assault. Right, so when it comes to drinking, we have to, again, make sure that our teens, make sure that our youth are not partaking in it, because there are some really risky behaviors, because their thought processes, their memories, how they're thinking, how they're trying to rationalize things has been compromised due to the impacts of alcohol, especially on their developing brains. When it comes to other substances, teens who drink are more likely to start using other drugs, things such as tobacco, things such as vape, or turn into things like vaping. These are some of the common substances that are done in conjunction when teens are drinking underage, right? So a lot of the times, if they are slowly but surely building up their tolerance, they will increase, or they will incorporate some different substances, right? So you have a lot of folks who are using the vape pens, or maybe utilizing a cigarette, or maybe even a prescription drug. And that, what they're doing is they're trying to combine it so that they can have a really, really strong impact on how they're feeling, right? Because some of these different substances create some mind-altering feelings that people can misinterpret as being or feeling well. However, that's not necessarily the case. When it comes to drinking alcohol, right, teens who drink are more likely to get in trouble with law enforcement. This is exactly as it states, right? We know that it is illegal for our youth, those who are under 21, to drink or participate in alcohol consumption. However, those who do are also, in addition to some of the risky sexual behaviors, because their minds, how they are thinking has been impacted or has been compromised, it impacts the different decisions they make. And what tends to happen is occasionally they'll make some decisions that are not really good for them. It can hurt some people because they're in this desperate attempt to really want to get some more alcohol, especially because it shouldn't be accessible for them. It can lead to things like stealing. And so those are things that get you in trouble with law enforcement and that have some, again, long-lasting consequences. So when it comes to some of these long-term effects, right, how they function socially, how they are interacting or engaging with their friends, with their family members, with their teachers, with members of their sports teams, or with members of, the hobby clubs that they're a part of. Socially, they are impacted because, again, their conversation skills, right, how their brain is developing, all these things, how they're remembering things, right? It's hard to have a friendship if you can't remember your friend's name because your brain has been impacted, right? So these social things that our teens need to grow up and be healthy, thriving adults are compromised. In addition to that, you also have learning impairments, right? You have individuals who experience increased difficulty learning because they're having a harder time retaining the information that they see in front of them or that is being taught to them. So when it comes to being in a classroom setting or maybe on an athlete being on the field and trying to remember a play, that alcohol has impacted their ability to create or make memories, or has impacted their ability to think, learn, and pay attention. So you also have that coming into play. In addition to that, alcohol for some people can lead to some various emotional impairments. So you have folks who may not necessarily know how to deal with how they're feeling physically as a result of potentially being intoxicated or some of the effects that come with consuming alcohol. And so this can lead to them having some various emotional states. Some include anger, some include sadness, some include confusion. There are a lot of different ways that a student or a teens or youths can be impacted or can be emotionally impacted by consuming alcohol. And last but certainly not least, again, we have some of those cognitive impairments. I mentioned it earlier, their ability to think, to learn, to pay attention. These are all skills. These are all things that our teens need. These are all skills that are going to make them those healthy, thriving adults, the leaders of tomorrow. However, if their ability to think, learn, and pay attention has been compromised, then their status as the future leaders of tomorrow is also being compromised. So what I have down here, I have a couple of goggles. So these are goggles that are impacting how folks are able to see. It's impacting their vision based on varying levels of blood alcohol content, also known as VAC. So fun fact, for adults, so this is for those 21 or over, in Michigan, the legal blood alcohol content level, or the legal BAC, is 0.08. However, for those who are under 21, it is 0.02. So that's a little fun fact for you. So what I like to have a volunteer out of the audience come and try these goggles. And what's going to happen is they're going to try a couple of the varying blood alcohol content levels, and they're going to try to walk in a straight line in our makeshift obstacle course here. And then we're going to talk about how, as the blood alcohol content increases, how the difficulty in functioning or operating your bodies with your motor skills has been impacted. So come on down and join us. Ooh, let's give a round of applause to our special guest. So the first set of goggles here is goggles, and they have a blood alcohol content level of less than 0.06. So for an adult, not necessarily the legal limit of intoxication. However, you are still impacted when you drink, regardless of what the blood alcohol content level is. So I'll have you stand right here. And then place those glasses on and try to see how easy it is for you to walk in a straight line in between these cones. And the goggles look great on you too. Okay. That was a wonderful job, right? You did a really good job, right? You did not necessarily knock cones over. However, could you feel your body kind of moving and shifting? That's what happens when you are impaired. So now what we're going to do is we are going to try goggles that are at 0.12 to 0.15 BAC. So this is nearly twice that legal limit. And we're going to see if you are experiencing more challenges when it comes to walking in that straight line. All right. Okay.
Looks like I stepped.
Looks right. It was a little bit of a stumble, right? You found that
I
one.
think I stepped on one and I was sure that I was in between.
Absolutely. So when it comes to using these or having that impaired vision, right, you may be thinking that you are walking straight, but in reality, you may be veering off to the left, you may be veering off to the right, but your ability to work or to use your body the way that you're normally able to do so when you are not under the influence is again compromised. So for our last one, we are going to take it up to the highest one that we have. So this is plus 0.25, right? So this is more than 3 times that legal limit. So here we are.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Right. So you completed it. Thank you so much.
But, yeah.
Yeah, this one was so much more difficult, right? Because again, this one was 3 times the blood alcohol content level, right? And so we have you being severely impacted, how you are controlling your body, how your motor skills are functioning because you are under the influence. And again, with our teens and their developing bodies and their developing brains, with an adult, it was already challenging. It's going to be even more challenging for a teen to function because they have that premature alcohol consumption. So thank you so much to our volunteer. You were phenomenal. So let's kind of move on. We're going to shift gears a little bit, and what we're going to talk about are some different signs, some signs to look out for if you think that your child may be potentially using alcohol. So first, you have things that are related to mood changes, right? You may have them withdrawing. You may have them being disengaged in things that were previously very engaging to them. You have them kind of acting deceitful, right? This could be them not being completely honest with you. This could be them omitting certain things from the stories that they tell. You also have them being very, very irritable, right? If the smallest thing sets them off, even more so than the regular teen, right? If the smallest little thing potentially can set them off, you may be seeing that they are experiencing or are participating in premature alcohol consumption. In addition to that, we also have academic problems, right? If you have a star student who suddenly their grades suddenly start dropping, they may not be turning in assignments and whatnot. This can also potentially indicate that there may be some sort of premature alcohol consumption going on. And in addition to that, those grades are dropping and they kind of go down to below failing, right? Or you have them consistently getting in trouble, especially in an academic setting, right? So this has increased issues with teachers, with counselors, with administration, and maybe even their peers as well. This one is exactly as it says, right? You find it, right? Maybe you find empty bottles. So if that is the case, you make sure that you clear the room and you check it for any additional bottles. Check some of the hidden places, some of the nooks and crannies of the room to make sure that there is nothing there. You also have the smelling of alcohol. One of the easiest ways to know if someone has been drinking is if you can smell it on their breath or their body, right? So if you are potentially smelling that on your teen or your child, again, make sure that you are clearing this out and kind of getting ready to have that serious conversation with them. And last but certainly not least, covering it up, right? If they are consistently running to use mouthwash or gum or mints or things that kind of take the smell away from them, that is also something you should be conscious or cautious of. Low energy levels, right? If they are always feeling really lethargic, they don't have a lot of energy, they're always tired, more so than the average teen because all teens like to nap. right? So you have them consistently complaining about not feeling well. This could be maybe a dry throat. This could be maybe stomach problems, right? There are so many different things, right? If they are consistently not feeling well or not feeling their best, right? They always seem like they have a headache or something like that that implies them being hungover. And last but certainly not least, trouble waking up. They are often late or they're sleeping every day. They're not necessarily making the different engagements, whether they're academic, extracurricular, or sporting engagements. Those are also some different things associated with low energy levels that could, again, be a potential risk factor that someone is drinking underage. They always need money. Our teens, they are always in our pockets, and a lot of the time it's for good reason. However, if they are consistently asking for money, it's always, I need a 10 here and a 10 there. And this goes back again to maybe them not necessarily being completely honest with you or omitting certain things from the story. That should raise suspicion, right? They can't tell you what that money is for, right? You can't take my money and not tell me what you need it for. Or they always complain about being broke. Maybe you have someone who's 16, 17, or 18 years old, right? And they have a job. However, they are burning, they're blowing through that money. And you're saying, well, if you're working all these hours, where does the money go? That could also potentially indicate that they may be spending their money on alcohol. Okay. Where are they, right? There are a lot of things, right? As parents, oftentimes what happens is you want to know where your child is at, right? So if you are consistently in a space where they say, hey, I'm going out, but they can't necessarily provide details, you don't know where they're going, that could also be another potential risk factor that they may be drinking underage. Or you don't know their friends, you don't know who they're hanging out with, or worst case scenario is curfew is passed and they still have not come home yet. These are also some things to be conscious of when you are having issues locating your teen, and again, they're not being forthcoming about all the details with the stories. So when it comes to some more effects of drinking alcohol, right, teens who drink are more likely to be involved in a car accident or a crash. Remember, as I said earlier, teens are also more likely to binge drink, right? That's that excessive alcohol use or consumption. So if you couple that with trying to drive, especially with them oftentimes being new drivers and still, maybe even despite having a learner's permit or maybe even passing their driver's exam, they're still new drivers and are still learning the rules of the road. And so having them be intoxicated as well as maybe a potential lack of road rules or road knowledge could lead to some very serious accidents, which at times can have fatal consequences. Let's do a quick knowledge check, everybody. We're going to play some true and false, and we're going to see how much you've learned from me. True or false? The human brain isn't fully developed until the age of 25. True. Absolutely, folks, this is absolutely true. Remember, your teens, even your adults, maybe your adult children who are 21, who are 22, 23, their brains and bodies are still also developing. So you also have to keep that in mind as well. All right. True or false? I can't look for signs of alcohol use in my child's room because it would invade their space. True or false? Absolutely. Absolutely false. I don't know about how anybody else grew up, but how I grew up was my parents paid the bills. You couldn't, if that door wanted to be open, if they needed to come in, if they had questions about anything, hey, have at it, right? Remember, you are the parent. You have that authority to go in and check their room or survey their room for any potential substances like alcohol. True or false? Teens who drink alcohol are more likely to binge drink. True, absolutely. Remember, for teens, this isn't something that should be accessible to them. So once they have the chance to get their hands on it, they are more likely to drink it and consume it as quickly as possible so that they can get rid of the evidence. And when they do this, this is again called binge drinking. So now let's transition and talk about transition times, everybody. So some of the critical times in our lives or in our teens or our children's lives are when they transition from elementary to middle school, when they transition from middle school to high school, or when they transition from high school to college, trade school, or the workforce, right? These are some critical times. These are super important in the development of teens or of our children. So what are some things that can change or happen from elementary to middle to high school or high school to college? And what are some things that can happen in those transition times? Does anybody know? Yes, that was an excellent answer. So one of the things that happens is for a lot of folks, it's kind of like starting over again, right? Because you may go to a new school when you are going from elementary to middle, middle to high, or even high school to college, trade school, or the workforce. So you don't have that sort of friend group or maybe that support system that you had worked all those years to build up. And that can be kind of scary for some folks, right? And so they may need a little bit of extra support. And sometimes they think that maybe they fall in with the wrong crowd, or they think that using substances or maybe potentially drinking is how they can cope with the stress that comes with that transition. However, that's not the case. So again, they have new routines. And what comes with new routines? You guessed it, new stressors, right? Thinking about how a student goes from every day, maybe having their parent wake them up every day of high school to take them to school or to remind them to drive to school. And then they are on a college campus, and now they're responsible for waking themselves up. They're responsible for getting themselves to class on time. They're responsible for setting up their own schedules. There are heightened responsibilities that come as our children or our teens are transitioning to the different critical phases in their lives, right? So these are some things where we need to make sure that we're having those conversations with them about as you get older, as you grow, as you progress. There are going to be some changes, so make sure you set some healthy boundaries. Make sure you put mechanisms in place to make sure that these new routines or the new stressors caused by them do not get the best of you. Also have, again, new environments, right? Going to a new school or leaving school to go to a new job, or maybe your first job, can be very, very stressful, right? You have folks who are in new buildings, they're in new environments, and they're around new people, and they're constantly learning, trying to see where they fit in this space. This can cause a lot of stress, especially if you have someone who is graduating from a very small school and they say, hey, I'm going to go to Michigan State. I'm going to go to the University of Michigan, right? These are really big schools with really big campuses, and this can be intimidating for folks. So again, making sure that you are helping them and assisting them with maybe looking at different campus maps or different city maps for maybe the areas that they're going to be working in, making sure that they're familiar with, what the protocol are, making sure that they know where safe spaces and safe places are, so that again, some of the stress that comes with a new environment is not overwhelming them. You also have heavier workloads. As you get older, the homework gets harder. It comes in larger quantities, right? And so again, this can also be something that's super stressful, especially if someone may be having an issue with trying to learn or retain some content. This can stress them out if you're trying and you're plugging away at those math problems, but you just aren't getting it. It can create a lot of stress and again, lead to maybe some unhealthy coping mechanism. So again, working with them to make sure that they know what the different academic resources are on different campuses, or if they're having an issue performing well in a job, making sure that they know that they can talk to their manager or their human resources department and kind of discuss a game plan so that they can find their perfect fit in their new environment and how they can successfully manage a new workload. Again, making new friends. There is a saying, there's a song that says, I don't want no new friends, right? And you have a lot of people who take that mentality because making new friends, especially when you are in an unfamiliar environment, can be very, very challenging. It can be extremely difficult. And as people, we're social oftentimes, right? A lot of us want to have a friend group. A lot of us want to have people to talk to, people to hang out with, potentially people to do homework with. You can carpool and ride to work. You can go to the same trade school or certificate program. There are so many things that we want to do with other people, with our friends. However, if you're having some difficulty doing this, also talk to your teens, talk to your students and let them know these are some potential places on their campus that they can go to. They can talk to their Office of Student Success. They can talk to their Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion program. They can talk to their Multicultural Center. They can talk to the Game Board Club. They can talk to the Gamers Club. There's so many people that they can talk to and so many different resources and outlets for them to successfully make new friends. So, what are some more ways that you can help, right? Talk to them about the dangers of drinking, right? And when it comes to this, a lot of the times what happens is people tend to use scare tactics as a way because they say, if I scare them, I'm going to scare them straight. However, that's not a very, very well-proven method. What happens a lot of the time is it may go in one ear, it may go out the other ear, or it may even influence them, give them greater influence to potentially partake in something that they shouldn't be. So making sure that you're having a real honest conversation with them, so you talk to them, you talk with them and not at them. Also, making sure that you as the parent, as a guardian, as a mentor, right? Making sure that you are serving as a positive role model for them, showing and exhibiting healthy behaviors, good decision-making skills, and things like that so that they can pick up on those. And again, they grow and develop into the healthy, productive citizens, the healthy, productive leaders of tomorrow. And last but certainly not least, always encourage healthy activities that do not involve alcohol, right? You do not need to drink to have fun. There are a lot of different things you can do. There are opportunities for folks who like to be physically active. You can join a walking club, you can join a running club, you can play a professional sport if you got it, right? You can play an intramural sport, right? You can play a club sport. You can draw, you can read, you can dance, or you could create a new lane that nobody else has thought of, right? And these are some different things that you can do, or some healthy ways so that you can stay clear of drinking, especially if you are underage. So we have another video here that we're going to show, and then we will have a little bit of discussion about this as well. So what that video did, and some of the key takeaways of that video, involved them really utilizing, the father and the daughter utilizing sort of a real life situation or scenario, something that can happen to a lot of us, where you are going to pick your child up from school and you overhear a group of kids or maybe some of their friends talking about potentially drinking or going to a party and drinking. However, when it comes to setting up that conversation, right? Because when you hear that, that can kind of scare you, but do not be scared to have that conversation with your child or with your teen, right? Because it is much needed. It is rarely ever a bad time to talk about the impacts of drinking. And so what you can do is you always just approach the situation gently and delicately, right? You maybe potentially use a real life situation, not to scare them, but to make sure that they have some sort of context and that they can apply it to what they are doing or how they're feeling or what they're experiencing. Trying to ask some different open-ended questions, right? And when we say open-ended questions, we mean things that don't require just a yes or a no answer, right? Because if you just say yes or no, there may be some additional context behind that we're not getting to. So those open-ended questions in those conversations allow you to really dig deeply and have that rich, honest conversation. And last but certainly not least, you also have affirming the choice not to drink. The father said, hey, let's discuss some strategies. What are some things we can do? What can we come up with? So in the event that you may be pressured or you may be influenced to drink, how can you combat that? How can you say no, right? Because although we think it's really easy to say no, saying no can be one of the most challenging things. And so what the father did was say, hey, let's think about, or they discussed, hey, let's think about, how about we say our excuses, oh my goodness, my parents will ground me if they found out. Or utilizing different things like, hey, say it's getting warm outside. My parents really need me to come. They want me to clean the garage and we're gonna do this. We're going on a family trip. We're going to grandma's house. We're doing something, right? Those are some things that you as parents could do to kind of help work with your teen to develop their best action plan when it comes to them saying no to utilizing alcohol. So when you are establishing rules, right, or you're setting those boundaries, make sure that they are clear and know what some of the consequences are that come with underage drinking and what the consequences are for breaking the underage drinking rules or laws. Do it together, as they did in the video. They worked together and they came up with the best action plan. When you include them in the conversation, they are much more receptive to it. They're much more receptive with coming up to a plan and even abiding by your wishes, right? And timing. If they do come home intoxicated potentially, wait until they are sober for you to discuss the topic. Because again, remember, if they are under the influence, things like their speech could be slurred, how they're thinking could be slurred, and that could lead to a very intense emotional moment that you may not be wanting to have. Keeping them safe, right? Let them know they can come to you for help. Oftentimes what happens is some people think that they can't talk to their parents. Oh my goodness, my parents would absolutely be upset at me if I mentioned this, right? However, reassure them, reaffirm that you are there to support them and that you are coming with a listening, non-judgmental ear. Did you all know that about 95% of Oakland County students report that their parents felt that them drinking alcohol would be either wrong or very wrong? So this goes to show you that as parents, as guardians, as mentors, as folks who are caring for our young people, your opinion matters. Your opinions are valid, and they are listening to the things that you're saying, even if you think it's going in one ear and out the other. So when you talk, they're going to listen. And even when you aren't talking, they're still paying attention. So be very conscious of that. Some of the things that can happen, as we all know, when it comes to folks who are breaking that law, fines of up to $5,000 can be broken depending on the severity of the crime, depending on some of the decisions made as a result of being potentially intoxicated, right? You can potentially face jail time, right? You can get up to 10 years depending on the severity of the crime. You are legally responsible if you give alcohol to a minor. And if they hurt themselves, hurt someone else, or if they damage property, or if you host them, right? These are all things that, as folks who may be providing or making alcohol accessible for youth, these are all things that you are responsible for. And these fines, right? These fines, this potential jail time, are things that you need to be conscious of. Let's do a quick recap, right?
As parents, it's our job to protect our kids and keep them safe. 90% of Americans with a substance use disorder began using substances before the age of 18. Here are 10 things you can do to help keep your kids safe from addiction. 1. Talk early and often. Talk early and often with your kids about the risks of using alcohol and drugs. This isn't a one-time chat, but an ongoing conversation that will change over time. Talking about addiction can be hard. Take some time to think about your own relationship to substances and whether your family has a history of addiction. If you have a drink in front of your kids, that's an opportunity to explain the differences between adult and adolescent brains and why it is so important for them to delay substance use until their brain is fully developed. 2. Support healthy activities. 2 important protective factors for kids are engaging with positive activities and feeling like they belong in a healthy community. 3. Set clear expectations. A critical element in preventing the development of a substance use disorder is delaying the age of first use while the adolescent brain is still developing. Make clear to your kids that they are not to use any substance until their 20s. 4. Establish consequences. Be clear and consistent about what the consequences of substance use would entail for your child. 5. It's not your job to be cool. Our kids don't need us to be their buddy. They need parents to guide and support them safely into adulthood. 6. Don't provide alcohol or drugs to your teens. We might think that teens will be safer drinking if we are there to monitor them. But parents supplying alcohol to their teens increases adolescent alcohol use and other unsafe behaviors. Teen drinking is not inevitable. Don't host, no access to substances at home, and remind other parents that substance use is dangerous for the adolescents, no matter where it happens. 7. Pay attention. Stay involved in your kids' lives even as they become more independent. Build relationships with their friends' parents and keep each other up to date about where your kids are and what they are doing. Tell other parents that your kid is not to use substances under any circumstance and ask about their house rules. 8. Make time for your child. As you nurture your child's passions outside of the home, don't forget to carve out time for family. Quality time with loved ones has a lasting positive impact on kids, and building a healthy relationship with your child now makes it more likely that if they begin to struggle, they'll feel comfortable coming to you for help. 9. Prioritize sleep. Getting a good night's sleep is critical for mental and physical health, especially during adolescence. Make sleep a priority in your household. Over time, a lack of sleep can lead to serious health conditions and increase a person's risk for addiction. 10. Intervene early. If you think that your kid may be struggling with substance use, don't wait to get help. Science tells us that the earlier a person is treated for a substance use disorder, the better their outcomes, and that treatment works even if a patient isn't feeling ready. Worried about your substance use or that of a loved one? Call 833-301-HELP for free, compassionate, and confidential support. Together, we can solve this. Join us.
Right. So those were... Yeah, I will give it to you once we conclude. But what that video showed us was that there are a lot of different things that we can do as folks who are caring for teens, whether it's in a mentorship capacity, whether it's as their parent or guardian, or maybe even as their friend, right? There are a lot of things that we can do to keep our kids safe and make sure that they are not consuming alcohol while they're underage. If I leave you with one thing, it would be this. As parents or as adults, for folks who may potentially be drinking because it is legal for you as an adult, as someone who is over the age of 21, be mindful of the fact that oftentimes you find the can or the bottle of beer right in the refrigerator next to the carton of milk. So making sure that you are doing your due diligence to keep all alcohol put up and keep it in a place that is not accessible to your teen. If you have any additional questions regarding anything we've talked about today, please feel free to reach out to your local youth assistants for Clarkston. Please feel free to reach out to your Clarkston Community Coalition, your schools, or us here at the Alliance of Coalitions for Healthy Communities. Here is a list of resources for folks who may have some additional questions or may be looking for some help. Thank you.